We have got enough. 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, we've got enough to get into it. Thank you for coming along. We'll hand over to you and we'll have questions at the end.
Kia ora koutou. I'm really delighted to be here today to present to you and to talk you through with Ali our third quarter results. And what a quarter it was. We were pleased to welcome our councillor directors to the board table, Jake McClellan and Victoria Henstock. The city, I think you'll all agree, was absolutely humming this last quarter. And ChristchurchNZ, I would say, has had one of the busiest quarters we've ever had. So I'm going to ask Ali to not walk you, but sprint you through some of those results.
Thanks, Therese, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. Oh, I thought it was better with it all. So I've got Lauren Heafy, our GM Destination and Attraction, and Kath Carter, who is our GM for Urban Development, if you've got questions in those spaces. And I will leave time for questions, but as Therese said, I will go quite quickly. So just before I get into the quarterly details, I've just got literally 2 slides, or 3 slides, just to do an overall summary. So first of all, a reminder of our remit. Obviously, we are tasked by Council to deliver sustainable economic growth for the city, and our framework defines success as delivering improvements in Christchurch City's workforce, productivity, attractiveness and livability. And the big picture for the city's economy is similar to the previous quarter and largely positive. Unemployment is up by about 0.2%, but is still really low. And that's been driven by an increase in the size of the labour force rather than by a decline in the number of people working. The labour force has the highest participation rate in almost 5 years, and the visitor economy, as Therese mentioned, is rebounding. And I'll talk later about the impact of the return of large cruise ships, but this graph is just worth noting. It shows international visitor card spending in Lyttelton more than doubled during this year's cruise season compared to the same period in 2019, pre-COVID, when we had no large cruise ship berths. So it's a good news story there. So briefly, talking about our quarter 3 results. So this slide shows some of our achievements over the last 9 months in a little more detail. So these are year to date up to the end of quarter 3. I'm particularly thrilled with the 3 screen productions that we've already attracted this year. And I also really want to make an acknowledgement to our business events team, who ring the bell every time they attract an event to our city. Their level of service target is to attract 30 events in the year. And by the end of the third quarter, they'd already won 62 bids that are set to attract almost $40 million worth of visitor spend to the city. So that's just a great achievement. And our levels of service agreed in the long-term plan are pretty much also on track, with 3 exceptions. So 2 measures we've already talked to you about. They relate to investment in and development of destination products. And as you know, we're doing a significant piece of work on a new destination management plan for Christchurch and Banks Peninsula. And we want to encourage investment and product development based on the outcomes from this important work, rather than creating things that will become out of date very quickly. And the other measure that is currently looking like we won't hit is the number of businesses in the Antarctic Business Network. This network has around 73 members, and it is unlikely to reach the target of 100. With limited resources, the office is focusing on stakeholder management for Christchurch-based Antarctic programs and creating commercial and scientific opportunities for the existing Antarctic network. Last comment in this slide, just looking at our finances, ChristchurchNZ Holdings is tracking ahead of budget for the quarter, about 1.2 million ahead, due to some activity occurring later than anticipated. So it is a phasing issue. These activities are expected to occur in quarter 4, and so budget versus actuals will be more closely aligned by the end of the year. So let's go into some of the highlights, some of our stories. One of our biggest wins of the third quarter was, of course, the fantastic Sail GP event, the inaugural ITM New Zealand Sail GP Grand Prix on Whakaraupo, Lyttelton Harbour in mid-March. And I want to take a little time to outline some of the highlights of that. So first of all, the live site. The live site was an initiative by us to make sure that residents who had missed out on tickets to the event, which was, of course, sold out, could still enjoy the racing and the atmosphere. And it really added some vibrancy to the central city. And as you can see from this photo, which I love, it was a huge success. We counted 4,500 people at the site over the weekend, and that doesn't include people who were queuing up to get onto the shuttle buses at Naval Point. And coming on to Naval Point, a huge part of the success of SailGP was the actual venue at Te Nukutai o Tapua, or Naval Point, and we heard from our SailGP athletes how great it was for them to be able to have their tech site and the racing venue together. So thank you for the efforts of Christchurch City Council staff, as your work will have really long-lasting community benefits, and it helped us to deliver an amazing asset for those that use the area. Events like SailGP bring people to our city. They stay at our hotels, they eat at our restaurants, and they enjoy all of our wonderful attractions, and that's really important to support our tourism and hospitality industries. So throughout March 2023, the electronic card transactions showed visitor spending in Lyttelton was up by nearly 14% from February to March, and Christchurch city spend was up 10%. And do take note of some of those excellent measures around pride that came for both visitors and resident pride that were associated with the event. But the best way for me to show you how great SailGP is to just play a very short video. It's much more interesting than hearing me talk, that kind of summarises some of the things that went around this incredible experience.
Fans have lined the shores of the Christchurch portside town, Lyttelton, for SailGP's long-awaited debut in New Zealand.
Beautiful day on the South Island. This is the hottest ticket in town as SailGP comes to New Zealand for the first time.
Oh, it was an aggressive move. How are the New Zealand boat doing this?
Kiwi team takes the win in race number 2. It's Canada cutting in front. A little history made in Christchurch as Phil Robertson will steer Canada to their first SailGP victory, and it comes at the ITM New Zealand Sail Grand Prix.
So it really hopefully brings it all back to you. It was such an amazing weekend. So thank you to all of you for your help in bringing that incredible event to our city. So now moving on to cruise, staying in Lyttelton.
Fans have lined the shores of the Christchurch portside.
So good. We'll watch it twice. So the cruise season has now completed, and it brought around 133,000 visitors to the city over the summer. We're currently at ChristchurchNZ undertaking a season review, and that will include economic and social impact measures and look at recommended improvements for the 23-24 season, including public transport. However, as you can see here, early data shows that both Lyttelton and the city as a whole benefited economically from cruise this year. Changing tack now, I'm going to move on to urban development. This quarter saw a significant milestone achieved for our Milton Street development project. That's the bottom picture there, with the settlement of a large portion of the site for a research and office facility for a Crown Research Institute, NIWA. And we're also seeing good progress on New Brighton, regeneration project aims. So we're starting to see the fruits of many years of labour, both for residents and for businesses. People started moving into the Seaview development, that's at the top there, at the end of Q3, and we have an emerging master developer for the mall area. And with a new business and community approach to be established shortly, it really is an exciting time for New Brighton. And then finally, on the Heart of the City work, the investigation phase was completed, which gave us a really robust baseline for the area and a foundation for a recommended development approach. Moving on to innovation and business growth. This quarter, we focused a lot of our energy on supporting the burgeoning Christchurch aerospace sector, including holding the first meeting of our Canterbury Aerospace Leadership Group. That includes representatives from Christchurch City Council Executive and councillors, Aerospace Christchurch, Tāwhaki, the university, etc., etc. And they, as a team, have agreed to develop a city strategy and a plan for the aerospace sector that will be led by ChristchurchNZ. We were also part of the city's delegation to Australia to attend the Australian Aerospace Congress and the Avalon Trade Show, and we visited Lot 14 in Adelaide to learn about how that facility has supported aerospace sector growth in Australia. We worked with Aerospace Christchurch to arrange a visit by the Administrator and Deputy Administrator of NASA, a real pinch-me moment, I think, for many of us. And we've been supporting the planning of the upcoming Aerospace Summit scheduled for September in Tupai, and during Q3 we also profiled the aerospace sector in the press, the Star, and avenues to highlight quite how important this sector is to our city. And then I just wanted to touch on the Antarctic season, the first post-COVID full season, and that ended really successfully. We hosted a couple of civic events on board 2 Antarctic research vessels in Lyttelton. Lyttelton's got a big theme in this quarter. The Aran, which is part of the Korean programme, and the Laura Bassi, which is part of the Italian programme. And we continue to carry out significant stakeholder management with the Christchurch-based Antarctic programmes, including a city induction for Dr. Yong-Chul Park, who's the new local Korean Antarctic Office representative. And then finally, before I throw the floor open to questions, I just wanted to share the results of our latest culture survey, which was completed during Q3. Our staff engagement is at an all-time high, so the latest results are the ones at the bottom there, with a record 92% response rate. Our engagement index showed 4.09 on a scale of 1 to 5, and our leadership rating was also the highest it's ever been, with a rating of 4.21 out of 5. So we're really proud of these. Our people are our greatest asset, and I'm thrilled to see these results. It gives us a really great platform to build on as we move into another busy period in Q4. So that's it from me. I've rattled through it really quickly. We'll leave it there and open the floor to questions.
Thank you. That's really good as always. Appreciate getting the updates on what's happening around the city and what you're contributing to. The one thing that stood out for me was around having was it Deputy Director of NASA. I mean, I just Googled while we're doing it. Their budget last year was $22.6 billion. So
sensational.
If we can harness a wee bit of that, or as much of it as possible, that would
and
be
I really
huge.
believe we can.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, Tyler, question.
Kia ora. I've just got one question, and I've probably asked this before when I first started, was how do you get the analytics on your visitor spend?
I'm going to ask Lauren to pick that up if that's all right, because she knows much better than me.
So it's taken from electronic card transactions and it's aggregated across the city. So we look at areas where there are large retail, hospitality and accommodation precincts, and then aggregate out the spend, because when you've got smaller regional areas, we can't do the aggregations. That's how we get it. Because it's just card transactions, it doesn't take into account cash and online spend. So it's a metric and a measure as opposed to the absolute truth of the spend.
Okay. Yeah. Would you have an idea on the international tourists that hold cash?
There are some thinking around that, but it's sort of post-COVID, it would be a little bit different, I'd say. So no, but there would be a national benchmark for that we could probably look at. Yeah.
And that's measured in the thousands, isn't it, of transactions?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Yeah, 2 questions. First one is around screen. So I've had some feedback from a number of people in the screen industry, loving the productions that are coming to town, but hearing rumours that the fund is not going forward. Any truth to the rumours? You've probably heard the same, Ali?
I have, and I can't answer it other than to say that we will do a full review of that screen grant. I think there is little doubt that it has significant impact and traction on the industry here. And it's probably one of those funds that you need to be in for a longer term in order to be able to really deliver benefits. But we will do a full review and then put it in our long-term plan and come to you with our recommendation about whether or not we should continue it.
Yeah. And
What I can tell you is that it'll be fully exhausted this time. We will spend it all.
yeah, that's really good. And will post-production become a potential category for the funding as well?
Possibly, because I think that's a really fair question.
Yeah. Okay, that's
Yeah,
good. So
yeah.
as long as it's on your radar,
Absolutely.
that's great. Now the other one is a little bit similar to Tyler's question around the spend of cruise ship tourists, and do we know what their average spend is, and do we have a target of how much money we can try and take off them? Well, that's what theme parks do. That's what concert promoters do. They all have a target. What they want to get.
Short question at the moment is we're just reviewing the spend. So you've seen preliminary data. We need to look at it across the season, do comparative analysis between Akaroa and Littleton in the past, pre-quake numbers, post-quake numbers, and then a national comparison. So that's all what we're doing at the moment. There is an average spend around cruise passengers. We think that this last season it was lower, mostly because a lot of the cruise passengers that caught cruise ships this year were taking their cancelled bookings from COVID times and doing them, so they tended to be cheaper tourists, so to speak. But that's all assumptions at the moment and not research that we've done. So once that comes out and we do the full review, we'll let you know.
Okay, and another follow-on from Tyler's one around the ones bringing money. I remember seeing a survey in the 90s, which, especially of high-end Asian tourists, most of them were leaving with over $10,000 in cash on their trips. So as a country or as a destination, we obviously weren't offering them whatever they wanted to spend their money on. Are we doing work to find out what all of these tourists want to spend their money on, and then making sure that's delivered so we can once again take
So yes, that sits within our destination management plan. So that's a longer term strategic piece of work that we're doing. But we have facilitated things like WePay, Alipay, and WeChat's transactions so that we can take different payment options from different visitors.
Brilliant. Awesome. Thank you.
Kelly.
Thank you, team. Fantastic. Given the outstanding success of Sail GP, and I don't know whether I asked this once before, I'm having a deja vu here. Are you considering looking at other sailing events down the track?
So we're what we have just done is, you'll remember at the beginning of the year we came and presented to you with joint presentation with Council and VO about our overall approach to the major events ecosystem. Actually later this month or the beginning of June, we're going to run our first City Partners group, which is basically a group of all the people who are leaders in the major event space, and they will assess all the different options that we have in terms of major event opportunities. And I think there are 9 going to this particular CPG. We won't be able to do them all. Some of them will be a better fit than others. We will assess them all against our major events criteria and make decisions about which ones are actually going to bring the best benefit to the city. And there may be some sailing ones in there, there may not be.
I think the one thing I would say is we want to look at a balanced portfolio. So it's wonderful to have an incredibly high-profile sailing event, but we also need to make sure that that balances out with other event content and other venues across other sectors.
Okay, and just another quick question. Obviously, Sail GP is going to Auckland next time, then back to us again, and then back to Auckland. Any ideas on what the future holds? Whether we could secure, I guess, exclusive rights, or is that highly unlikely? Or is that sensitive information you can't discuss?
It would be sensitive information I couldn't discuss. I think at the moment we are really looking forward to seeing how the event goes in Auckland, and then we need to think about what lessons we've got from the 23 event in terms of how we then put it on in 25. So that's an ongoing discussion. I think it would only be probably after that 25 event that we would start to really think about whether this had something longer term. But potentially, I mean, look, there's no doubt that if you ask the Sail GP team, they will say that the Christchurch event was the best single event they have run globally, and not just by a little bit, but by a lot. But there are challenges with it, as we also know. So, yeah.
Great, thanks. Kelly. Celeste.
Hi, thank you for the. It's very interesting to hear about the New Brighton stuff. I just want to talk about Sail GP in relation to the marine management plan. I understand that the drafting of the plan that sits with you guys and operates, the implementation of the plan is with Sail GP. However, how the plan is sort of drafted sort of determines how the plan is implemented. And if there's gaps identified in that process, we need to be making sure that we review the process So what is the process to review the plan, to look back and see what worked and what didn't work?
So just to clarify, the marine, I always get this wrong, marine mammal management plan is something that we as a council and ChristchurchNZ demanded was in place in order for us to commit to SailGP. We at no point have signed it off. Our board does not have expertise in this space, and they have not signed off the plan per se, nor were we involved in drafting it. So it is a document that is between SailGP, Ngāti Whaki and DOC as the people that are the experts there. However, it is really important that it is good and robust and in place, and that's in order for us to hold the event. There will be a full review of that plan, and then we will take forward the learning to make sure that when we come back in 2025, we've learned anything that might have not gone as well as it could, and we've got that relationship really tight. But it's not something that we own. It is owned by those people. It's just something that we say has to be in place in order for us to run the event.
So as part of that, one element that could be reviewed is whether it's appropriate for SailGP to sort of put in place some of the mechanisms of it, because we want to make sure that the race organisers who have expertise in a particular area aren't managing or making decisions on a day that might not be sort of in the best interest of what the intent of the plan is.
So I think the first answer was really appropriate in that we insisted on something, but actually we have no, am I right in saying we have no responsibility of it? I think given the nature of the questions and the interest of time and getting through everyone else with them, I think if you did want to have an offline chat about some of that technical stuff, that would be appropriate to do so.
We're really happy to, but we may not, as you say, be able to answer, because so all we can say is we absolutely want SailGP to run in parallel with dolphin welfare. It is crucial that the dolphins are protected and looked after. And that's why those people, that DOC who have one particular view and SailGP who might have the other view, they're in there together working with Ngāti Whaki as the guardians of the harbour to make sure that this is done in an appropriate and balanced way. It's crucial that it happens, but more than happy to have an offline conversation.
Great, thank you both. Tyrone. Yeah, I've got you, Yanni. Yep.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and no surprise to see Banks Peninsula at the forefront of our economic well-being in the city. And I personally want to thank...
Do you mean just in terms of all the council investment over there, Tyrone?
Well, hey, look, it's paying divvies now, Sam. And a personal thanks from me to you, Ali, for the work that you and all of your staff have done with our communities of Banks Peninsula. But I do have a question around cruise ships. So the Minister of Tourism... and they do change quite regularly, so it's has made it clear to all regional tourism organisations that they want to see sustainable and regenerative tourism. So I know that there's been a lot of questions around that with cruise. So I just want to sort of hear how that's going to play out for ChristchurchNZ and how we interact with the cruise industry. That's a big question, I know, but it's pertinent right now because the season's just finished.
I'm happy to answer it, or you? Which would
we can tag team.
Okay, so regenerative tourism is crucial. So, and you'll know as part of our city economic ambition that it's something that we believe is really important, that we move to a regenerative economy, not just in the tourism industry, but actually across the board. It's something that we really believe strongly in. However, there are always transitions and balances as you move from A to B. And what we don't want to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we know that cruise is really important. It is an economic advantage to the city. We will have all felt it on cruise days in town. There was a definitely different feel to the city centre. And obviously we're seeing those results in Littleton as well that are showing there is an economic benefit. So what we need to do is we need to plan and work with the cruise industry to make sure we're moving towards regenerative. That will be a long-term piece of work. It will form a crucial part of our destination management plans.
And I think it's about understanding what levers we have to pull in something that is a national context. So to your point about the minister, we know that there is a review of the industry being done with central government at the moment, and we await the outcomes of that. Some of that looks like it will be requirements around what cruise ships do with their waste, how they power themselves, those kinds of things, because we as one port can't pull those levers on our own. So we need to work collectively with the national context.
Hopefully we can speed it up.
I think there's an election.
I can keep asking questions.
Might slow us down.
No, thank you. My question was covered by Celeste rather well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Just wanted to check around housing, what we're doing in terms of prosperity around housing. I know you've got a dashboard, and I know we're doing a review of our economic ambition. Has the economic ambition, does it have anything about dealing with the issue of the unaffordability of housing in terms of both renting and home ownership?
So the economic ambition talks very clearly about all of the different capitals that we need to grow and restore, including community and social capital. And part of that is about affordability. I don't think it has anything specific in it at this stage, but that's because it's more of a light on the hill. It is quite a long-term, by its very nature, ambition. As we start to get into the CNZ strategy that will help bring that to life, and as we encourage and work with our partners, such as Council, to think about how they will bring their aspects of it to life, then we'll start to be able to build some more of that in. Do you want to add anything else, Kat?
Yeah, look, I mean, it is a priority in terms of how we look at our sites and our place-led areas, in terms of looking at all the things you need to make a great place around affordable and social housing. So it is something we are mindful of in our project work.
I guess I see all the, really interesting, exciting things that you're doing, and I see a huge focus on the central city. I see a focus on New Brighton and Littleton, and it's not to take away from that, but what I don't see is what work you're doing in the lowest socioeconomic suburbs of the city to increase prosperity and well-being for the community in terms of the economic outlook for people. And is there any way that we can get a sense of, because I know you're doing some stuff with some of the schools, for example, but is there any way that we can get a greater visibility or a greater direction or understanding of the direction that we're trying to help those who
Okay,
have the
Yanni,
least
so
to get...
questions not... Yeah, so Ellie, are you someone able to address that briefly?
So I think I think that's a really fair question, and I'd quite like to have an offline conversation with you about it, Yanni, to pick your brains on some ideas. And if there are other councillors that want to be involved in that, Marie, I'm looking at you, Mark, you look like you might want to. So let's have a conversation about it. There is no doubt that equitable growth and prosperity is something that we want our economic ambition to achieve. So if it might be a reporting angle, it might actually be that we need to do more, but I'm really happy to look at that. So let's have an offline conversation about it.
Cool, thank you. Okay, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just following on from Yanni's question. Thanks for what you're doing in Milton Street. I think it's going to change that environment, and it's right by a park and everything. It's a no-brainer, but opportunities like that don't kind of raise their head very often, so thanks. Just a question with regards to your partners. And I know that with regards to major events, I know VO is one, so just clearing my interest there. When you have that meeting with those partners and you talked about then you'll look at and run them by those opportunities by your major events criteria. Have your partners, because I don't know the others, I can kind of guess who they are, but have they had a input into the criteria?
Absolutely.
Right,
so,
yeah, cool. Thank you. Cool.
Thank you. Look, mine's following on from Tyrone. Tyrone was specifically speaking about the cruise industry, but I want to talk about tourism in general. And I listened to Hinare at the tourism thing they had the other day. There seems to be a kind of, I'm looking for the word, and it's not discombobulation. It's a I'll just put hand motion on. It's a misfit anyway. Between the tourism industry that's striving to get back to pre-COVID numbers or even increase, and the minister who's talking about a reset, and a lot of regenerative tourism is actually about reducing numbers and doing it differently. So are you working directly with the minister, or is anyone talking to you directly, and how would you address that perceived kind of conflict between outcomes?
It is
We're both looking at each other because it's a really live conversation. Yeah,
it is a live conversation for us at the moment. We hosted the minister here on Friday, and that was part of the discussion. And particularly for an urban destination like Christchurch, it is a tension where we have considerable investment in infrastructure that grows volume and scale of international visitation in particular. But there are ways to look at the future of tourism being regenerative that we are deep diving in our destination management plan at the moment. We're not going to have a really articulate answer to your question right now, but it is something that we're very live to and grappling with at the moment and working through. And I think over the next few months, you'll start to see a maturity around that thinking and where that goes.
And I think it's also interesting to think about Christchurch's role in the greater NZ Inc. ecosystem. So our destination management plan, because of that infrastructure here in Christchurch, potentially might have a slightly different role to play within the New Zealand ecosystem, but we are absolutely working closely with them because we have to. So it's like the Russian dolls, or I'm not supposed to say that, the little stacking, we've got to be linking into the New Zealand strategy and into the broader strategies.
I hate Russian dolls. They're so full of themselves.
All right, so
It's a good. Thank you.
With a dad joke.
I'd quite like to keep this moving. So, are you done, Pauline? Right, I got one.
No, I've got one more joke.
Okay. Was that last one a joke? If we go Andre first, and then Phil, and then we'll have to move on. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on Aaron's point around people leaving the city with cash, which of course we want them spending it here. Can you please just walk me through a scenario when people get off the cruise ship and they're coming into the central city? Where do they access their information about things they can spend money on, which realistically needs to be activities? If you're going to 20 different cities, you can't buy things at each of them to bring away with you in your small bag. So it has to be activities. Where do they get the information from, and how are they able to
So
get from
multiple
boat to
layers. So we have multiple touch points with visitors, which starts with digital touch points. So ensuring that our website's fit for purpose and they can access that information. Then we provide considerable amounts of information to the cruise ships themselves. So the cruise lines have their own information centres on board. When they get off and disembark, we have a range of cruise ambassadors and cruise volunteers in town who are provisioned with maps and information about what they can purchase and do and how they can move their way around. We've been working with the business, particularly Central City Business Association, to showcase offers to cruise ship passengers. And then as we move forwards, we are about to undertake a tender process for a visitor information centre in the central city. That will be we'll be going out to tender for a private sector operator to deliver visitor information services, and that will be happening in the next couple of months.
Awesome. You've just answered my follow-up question. Of course, the ambassadors are awesome, but of course they can't take a financial transaction from someone.
Yeah.
But there's things in the works, so that's
there is.
fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, and last but not least, Phil.
Okay, two questions. When's the first peg for building going in the ground at Milton Street, please, roughly?
Site clearing will be is happening, and more will be happening in the next couple of months. So I would say in about 6 months.
Okay, so maybe by Christmas something could happen. And are you still keen, or I know I am, getting rid of those old houses on Sydenham Park? Are they? Do you know how they're going?
You mean the heritage ones?
No, I mean the
oldest pensioner housing in New Zealand.
Can we just ask he's asked the question. If you can answer it, then we need to move on. We've taken quite a lot of time on
The
this.
site's going to be cleared in the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you. Very good. Ta.
Okay, right. So I'm happy to move this. Pauline's happy to second it after her joke. Would anyone like to discuss it? Yanni would. Yanni.
Yeah, I mean, look, I appreciate the work that ChristchurchNZ is doing, but I do think as a city we do need to reflect on what we're hearing through the resident survey, and you can see very clearly that there's parts of the city that are really dissatisfied with things, and I think ChristchurchNZ does have an important role to play, both working with local businesses in those lower socioeconomic communities to ensure that they can be successful and prosperous, but also working with communities around just dealing with some of those bigger challenges that we face around intergenerational inequity that is growing in our society. And although possibly had an opportunity with the COVID response to address it, is actually what we've seen is actually getting worse. So inequity is growing in our city. We knew this would be a risk post-earthquake. It's become a risk or it's become a reality post-earthquake and post-COVID. So I just think we need to really think about what we can do to ensure that as many people in the city have an opportunity to be prosperous, not just the ones that are already prosperous getting more. And so appreciate the work that ChristchurchNZ are doing. But if I look at some of the local business areas or the commercial areas in my area, places like Woolston, they could use some support from the council dealing with a whole raft of issues that is happening and impacting on those businesses. So I welcome the ability to chase up further with ChristchurchNZ around trying to figure out a way to address those things. I do think we need to look at some transformational programs to invest in the east to enable greater prosperity for people.
Tim.
Yeah, look, thank you. It's kind of odd how things happen because, you think it's such a positive and then you can think, but I just think that, you don't sacrifice the perfect for the good. CNZ can't solve all the social issues and they're doing absolutely outstanding work, I think. And you look at Milton Street and you look at New Brighton and what they've done there and what they continue to do. So, and with our tourism, the fact of the matter is there will be changes in the future with the way tourism operates and they will be at the forefront of it. But at the moment we are where we are, and because of the economic situation, and news from Australia is getting worse and it will come across here as a ripple, so it is going to get worse and harder as we go forward. So any money that this organisation can squeeze out of the wonderful people that come to New Zealand, Aotearoa, is fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Look, as the previous chair of the Waikato Coastal Bureau Community Board, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done in the New Brighton area. I think it's made a real difference, and when we look at the trajectory of how things are improving out there. Look, I really just want to congratulate you for the work, particularly you, Kath. So thank you.
That's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to really say a big thank you to you and your team for what you do. And the Sail GP was a magnificent event, and what you've been doing with the cruise ships and trying to manage that in and through our city has been great to see, and look forward to the learnings we can get from that season as well. Also like to see what you're doing in that development space. That's really quite phenomenal to see that old city care site transforming towards another life is exciting. And just, to say, hey, thank you and keep up your good work.
I feel more and more enthusiastic, optimistic and excited about Christchurch each time you come and speak to us. Thank you for all that you do.
That! Call it there, Sam. That's a soundbite. Thank you.
Just be careful, we haven't agreed on their budget yet for this. Okay, so we'll put that to the vote. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Great. Thank you both.
Thank
coming
you
in.
all.
Thank
Love to see you.
coming
Enjoy
in.
the rest of your day.
Great. Now we're moving to the next item, which Mel is going to chair, but I understand Leah, you got something called the...
Yeah, we've received a couple of proposed amendments that we need to discuss with the members that have actually put them forward. So can we have Jake and Yanni just break for 5 minutes as we discuss those?